I stood outside the courthouse, feeling the weight of emptiness pressing down on my shoulders. All I had were the clothes on my back and a thin manila envelope filled with legal documents that confirmed I had officially lost everything. My wife Sarah had walked away with our $3.4 million mansion, half of my savings, and a smug little smile, the kind that seemed to say she had won a game. Beside her was Kevin, my best friend since my early 20s, grinning like a child who got exactly what he wanted. As we stepped through the courthouse doors, Sarah leaned close, her breath cold against my ear. I thought maybe she would say something gentle, some fleeting words about the years we spent together. But no. She whispered sharply, "You're pathetic?" That word hit me harder than anything the court had ever said. It wasn't just her betrayal, it was the final seal on a life I thought I had built. I didn't chase them. I didn't argue. I walked to the parking garage, sat behind the wheel of my truck, and let the numbness settle in. That night, I parked behind a small diner off Route 9. The headlights cut through the darkness as I curled into the driver's seat, my mind spinning with questions. Where had I gone wrong? How did everything I built in 30 years vanish in a single courtroom judgment? Then my phone rang. Unknown number. My first instinct was to ignore it, but something made me answer. A calm, European, accented voice said, "Mr. Davidson, we've been trying to reach you for 15 years. This is the Gallen Private Banking Group in Zurich. We believe you are the rightful heir to an account belonging to Roy Davidson." I froze. My Uncle Roy had vanished nearly 2 decades ago, leaving whispers of wealth and secrets behind. The voice continued, reading an account number and finally saying, "The balance in this account is $47 million. There's something you need to know about how it got there. My name is David Davidson. I'm 51, and until last year, I thought I had a solid life. I wasn't rich by celebrity standards, but I had worked my hands raw to build something real. 30 years of construction, swinging hammers, laying foundations, earning every dollar with blood, sweat, and busted knuckles. I believed in loyalty, in family, in waking up early and going to bed tired. I believed that was enough to hold life together. Sarah and I met when we were teenagers. I was 21 when we married. She had a fire in her eyes, a light that filled the room without a word. Back then, we didn't have much, just a small apartment near Poughkeepsie, some secondhand furniture, and massive dreams. I worked roofing, framing, remodeling, anything I could get my hands on. Sarah worked at a diner by day and studied nursing by night. We were a team celebrating our first tax return like it was a lottery win. We scraped together enough to buy a dilapidated house, pouring every ounce of effort into fixing it. I loved her. Truly, completely. Eventually, I started my own construction crew. Bigger jobs came, better bids, and a city contract changed everything. For the first time, I could give Sarah a life she always dreamed of. I surprised her with a mansion in Westchester County. Not flashy, just classic brick, 5 bedrooms, a wine cellar we never used, and gardens she promised to fill with lavender. It cost $3.4 million, most paid in cash. I thought I was giving her the dream she deserved, but people change. Sarah joined country clubs, charity boards, and spent more nights away from home. Hair always perfect, conversations about wine tastings instead of dinners with me. I told myself it was growth, that maybe I needed to catch up. Weekends I spent with my daughter, Brandy, now 23, brilliant and stubborn like me, laughing and fishing off the dock. My mother, Eileen, still lived in the house I grew up in, and every Sunday, I brought her over for dinner. Even when Sarah wasn't thrilled then there was Kevin, more than a friend, a brother. We built decks together, hunted, shared beers under the stars. When my father passed, he was there for my mother when I couldn't find words. I trusted him more than anyone. And I never saw it coming. Sarah and Kevin spent more time together, charity events, late night planning sessions. She told me I was always tired, too busy, too focused. I worked harder, hoping love could bridge the gap. But distance grew. Conversations died. Nights became empty. I remember one Thursday. I came home early, though it's muddy from a duck job in Syracuse, carrying cannabis to surprise Sarah. Kevin's truck was parked by the garage. I felt a pang but walked inside slowly. The house was too quiet. Upstairs, I heard a laugh, the laugh that used to be mine to hear. My chest tightened as I walked to the bedroom. There they were, Sarah and Kevin, no panic. No shame. Just quiet, knowing they'd been caught but didn't care. Sarah crossed her legs, fixed her hair, and whispered calmly, "You're early." I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I walked out, down to the garage, sat on plywood, staring at the floor for what felt like hours. The betrayal was clear now, all the warning signs of the past years making sense, the distance, the cold smiles, the growing secrecy. I slept in the guest room that night, the untouched cannabis in their box on the counter, only to see them in the trash the next morning. Got Sarah filed for divorce. No argument, no negotiation, just cold precision. She had hired Donovan, one of the state's sharpest divorce attorneys, a man whose white teeth and shark-like eyes shredded my reputation in court. Twisting words, twisting truths. He painted me as a controlling workaholic, someone who neglected his wife. They used old disputes, financial struggles during the recession, even innocent messages, all to prove I was unfit. After 9 grueling months, the ruling came. The mansion, half my savings, retirement, all hers. What remained for me? My tools, my truck, and a small, sparse apartment I rented to survive. Standing outside the courthouse, I felt numb. Not anger, not sadness, just hollow. Kevin was gone, probably already inside the mansion celebrating with her. Sarah passed by, leaned in, and whispered the words that would echo forever. "You're pathetic." That night, I didn't return to the apartment. I drove north, aimless, searching for solitude. Around 10 p.m., I pulled into a diner parking lot, letting the headlights wash over the asphalt. Then my phone rang again. Unknown number? I hesitated, then answered. A calm European voice said, "Is this David Davidson? We've been trying to reach you for 15 years. Are you the nephew of Roy Davidson?" My Uncle Roy, the one who vanished with whispers of wealth, leaving cryptic letters and memories behind, was suddenly back in my life. Through a $47 million inheritance waiting in Zurich, I sat in my truck, heart pounding, staring at the stars. My entire reality had shifted. The bitterness of divorce still lingered, but a door had opened, a second chance at life. The journey to Zurich to uncover what my uncle had left was about to begin. Zurich was nothing like I remembered from my youth. The city gleamed under a soft gray morning, cobblestone streets polished by light rain, and the old stone buildings carrying centuries of history. I had barely stepped outside the airport when a black Mercedes pulled up. The driver, impeccably dressed, held a small sign with my name, David Davidson. I shook his hand, firm, polite, and without small talk. His eyes were sharp but unreadable. The drive through the heart of Zurich was quiet, except for the gentle hum of the engine. Lake Zurich stretched to the left, silver and calm, reflecting the overcast sky. We stopped in front of a stone building with wrought iron gates and golden letters engraved in the arch, Gallon Private Banking Group. It was intimidating, elegant, and unmistakably powerful. Inside, the smell of leather and polished wood filled the air. I was escorted through a hallway that seemed more like a gallery, lined with rare books and antique globes, into a private office overlooking the lake. Behind a massive mahogany desk stood Simon Keller, the same man from the phone, calm and composed. He smiled warmly. "Mr. Davidson, welcome. We've been waiting for you." Simon poured coffee and handed me a thick folder. I opened it to see letters meticulously handwritten by Uncle Roy and documents detailing decades of hidden wealth. Simon explained everything. My uncle hadn't vanished randomly. He had intentionally removed himself from the U.S. financial system, selling properties, converting assets, and moving capital into a series of trusts protected under foreign jurisdictions. Shell companies, off-the-book investments, old banking codes, all legal but secretive. "David," Simon said, "your uncle specifically instructed that the funds be released only after your divorce was finalized. He did not trust your former spouse." His words hit hard, but also sparked a strange sense of clarity. Uncle Roy had been watching over me all along, waiting for the right moment to intervene. I flicked through the letters. One read, "David, I know this may not make sense yet. I've watched you from afar, seen your struggle, your perseverance. You deserve more than what life has handed you. This inheritance is more than money, it's freedom, a chance to build again without limits." Another letter contained journal entries from my teenage years. Roy had predicted my path: hardworking, loyal, yet vulnerable to betrayal. He had hidden a fortune, not to enrich me blindly, but to teach me something deeper. Money is just a mirror, David. It reflects who you truly are. Make sure you know yourself when you see it. The folder also included a detailed account of assets, stocks, gold holdings, rare properties, and a villa in the south of France. The total? $47 million, waiting for me to claim. My hands shook as I signed the authorization for transfer. Simon explained further. My uncle's investments had been carefully chosen: private equities, old world bonds, and discrete holdings that had compounded steadily. He emphasized discretion. This was not just wealth, it was legacy. I felt a mix of awe, disbelief, and gratitude. For the first time since the divorce, I felt a spark of control over my life again. Zurich wasn't just a backdrop. It felt like a threshold. I walked along the lake, watching swans glide across the water. Everything around me was calm, precise, disciplined, a reflection of the life my uncle had carefully constructed for me. And now it was mine to navigate. I called my mother first. "Mom," I said, voice trembling, "everything. It's real." She simply smiled, knowing more than I ever realized. Brandy was next. "Dad," she said quietly, "just promise me you won't let this change who you are." Her words anchored me. This inheritance was a gift, but not just for spending. It was a responsibility to build wisely, with integrity. The flight home was surreal. For 30 years, I had measured life in sweat and work boots and timber dust, in days that ended with exhaustion and pride. Now I measured it differently, in possibility, in choices, in freedom to rebuild a life stripped bare, but with lessons learned. Back home, I bought a modest ranch outside Nashville. Wide open spaces, a wraparound porch, and enough land for Brandy to visit any time. The house was simple and pretentious. I repaired it myself: windows, floors, the deck. Every nail was deliberate, every board laid with intention. The act of building reminded me who I truly was. Construction had always been my therapy, my anchor. Sarah found out eventually. She called first, hesitant, softer than I remembered. "David, I make a mistake?" "I never stopped loving you," she said. I listened, letting her words flow. But I had changed. "You didn't love me when I had everything," I replied gently. "You loved what I gave you. Now you want back in because I'm worth more on paper. I'm not the same man you walked away from." Her sobs echoed through the line, but I hung up. I wasn't seeking revenge, apologies, or closure. I sought peace. And for the first time in years, I felt it. Kevin tried calling too. Man to man, he left messages full of regret. I deleted them unread. I didn't need reconciliation. I didn't need validation. What I needed was life, my life, rebuilt from the lessons of betrayal, loss, and resilience. I started small. I bought a dog bone, a loyal shepherd mix who followed me everywhere. I volunteered locally, building ramps, benches, and decks for those in need. I launched a foundation, the Davidson Grant, to help single fathers rebuild after divorce. Those nights sleeping in my truck, lost and alone, have left a mark. If I could help just one man regain footing, then all the pain, all the betrayal, meant something greater. Most importantly, I relearned my worth, not measured by money, possessions, or the betrayal of others, but by the resilience to rebuild, to create, to live authentically. Money hadn't healed the wounds, but it offered a path forward. Freedom, clarity, and a second chance at life. Evenings on the porch became sacred. Brandy would bring her guitar, strumming softly while I grilled or sipped coffee. Conversation flowed dreams, ambitions, quiet after. My mother still stayed in her old house, refusing to move, content with simplicity. The contrast reminded me, peace is not about grandeur, it's about presence. I've finally understood my Uncle Roy's wisdom. Money wasn't the goal. Life was. And now, with lessons learned, wounds healed, and hands ready to work, I was ready to live again. Not chasing the past, not fearing the future, but embracing the power of what I could rebuild. The days after returning from Zurich blurred into a rhythm I hadn't felt in years. Each morning, I woke before sunrise, breathing in the cool Nashville air, listening to the quiet of open fields. There was no mansion, no luxury cars, no reminders of betrayal. Just a ranch house, my tools, Brandy, and Boone the shepherd mix who had become my shadow. I immersed myself in work again, but differently this time. Not for approval, not for money alone, but for purpose. I repaired the old porch swing, built a deck that overlooked the pasture, and even installed a small greenhouse for Brandy's herbs. Each nail, each plank, each stroke of paint was a meditation. It reminded me that life isn't about the wealth you accumulate, that the legacy you leave through effort, care, and honesty. Brandy adopts it quickly to the new life. She still had dreams, music, a small cafe, and a life she wanted to build on her own terms. I supported her, but differently. Instead of giving, I guided. She earned her first small investment for the cafe by managing a weekend market stall, learning responsibility, negotiation, and persistence. Watching her grow reminded me that I had inherited more than money. I had inherited the chance to nurture strength, integrity, and self-reliance in the next generation. The foundation I launched, the Davidson Grant, became my mission. I connected with single fathers who had lost homes, relationships, or hope. I built ramps for children with disabilities, decks for senior centers, and benches in public parks. Each project wasn't about visibility, it was about impact. Every smile, every handshake, every story of gratitude reminded me that life's true currency is human connection. I began documenting my journey, not for fame, not for social media, but to share lessons learned. Stories of betrayal, rebuilding, and eventual empowerment resonated with thousands online. Comments poured in from people who had faced divorce, financial ruin, or the collapse of trust. I realized my story wasn't just mine. It belonged to anyone who had felt broken, abandoned, or powerless. Not financially, I was now secure. But that security was secondary. What mattered was freedom, the freedom to choose how I spent my days, whom I trusted, and what I built. My Uncle Roy's wisdom echoed every time I handled money, every time I invested in community projects, and every time I considered the temptation to return to past grievances. Money as a mirror. Know yourself before you see it, he had said. I finally understood. Kali and Hank tried reaching out months later. I let the calls ring. Their lives were theirs to navigate, their consequences theirs to bear. I no longer needed their validation. I had learned that peace is not earned through revenge, confrontation, or reconciliation with the past. It is cultivated within, quietly, steadily. The ranch became my sanctuary. Evenings were filled with simple joys, grilling steaks while Brandy played guitar on the porch, Boone running through the fields. The scent of blooming lavender in the small garden I planted as a tribute to lessons learned. I would often sit on the creaky porch swing I built with my own hands, sipping coffee, watching the sunset behind the oak tree. Each sunset reminded me that time is finite, and the way you spend it defines the measure of your life. I also began mentoring younger builders and tradesmen, sharing practical skills and life lessons simultaneously. My story of loss and rediscovery became a blueprint for resilience. People asked about wealth, and I told them, money can give you options, but it can never teach you how to live. They listened. They learned. And in their growth, I found joy. Brandy eventually opened her cafe, modest yet full of character. She named it Second Chance in honor of what we both had reclaimed: life, trust, and the power to rebuild from scratch. The opening day was quiet but filled with heartfelt congratulations from neighbors, friends, and the father supported through the Davidson grant. Seeing her succeed on her own terms was the greatest affirmation I could ever receive. Months turned into a year. I traveled minimally, focused primarily on the ranch, the foundation, and family. I rebuilt old friendships carefully, with boundaries, ensuring that only people of integrity became part of my renewed life. I realized that betrayal and loss were catalysts, not endings. They forced me to strip away superficial attachments and discover my core: resilience, patience, honesty, and the capacity for forgiveness, not for others, but for myself. Thought one evening, as I sat on the porch watching Boone chase fireflies, I reflected on the journey. Losing the mansion, Kali, and Hank had been devastating. But in that destruction, I found clarity. Zerk had given me opportunity. Yes, but the real transformation came from within. The man who once felt powerless, defeated, and betrayed had been reborn. He was wiser, calmer, and free. The greatest gift my uncle left wasn't the millions. It was the chance to rediscover myself, to rebuild deliberately, and to embrace life on my own terms. Every sunrise now carried promise, every challenge a lesson, every moment a reminder that the past doesn't define the future. I wake most mornings with a sense of purpose. Brandy greets me with a smile and a story from her cafe. Boone nudges my hand for attention. I sip my coffee on the porch, watch the sunrise over the oak tree, and feel content. Not because of wealth, not because of recognition, but because I am free. Free to live authentically, and free to rebuild from whatever life throws at me. And that's the truth I want to leave for anyone listening. Loss is not the end. Betrayal is not the measure of your value. Money can't heal wounds, but clarity, effort, and integrity can. Build your life deliberately. Protect your worth. Nurture your relationships carefully. And when life strips everything away, trust that the foundations you've built within yourself are unshakable. This is the story of my fall, my inheritance, and my ultimate rise. It is not just about wealth. It is about redemption, rebuilding, and reclaiming the man I always was beneath the chaos. I share it so that anyone who has been broken may know there is a path forward, and it starts within.